I guess the major thing, if this is your first time running a game, you should definitely choose a system you already know. Even though you've heard this other game system is really cool and really amazing, if you've never really ran it before, you won't sort of know the kinks maybe that are in that system. Like if you have a character advancement that in a span of a couple of days your characters advance beyond the normal human means just because of the way the experience points are added or points are spent, you might find yourself having a problem keeping your game running. Same thing if you're not too sure about the rules, but you've got people who've played in this game system before, well, you'll get, like you said, you'll have people basically running the game for you, and you're just opening the door to rules lawyers. I guess one way to maybe figure out whether or not you have rules lawyer, or maybe determining everybody's level of knowledge of the game system, is during your first character creation session, where you sit down with all your players and create your characters for the first time. Now, there's a lot of people who'll just say, well, send me a character by email, but it might just be a good idea to meet with you in person so that you can all talk to one another and create a party as opposed to just characters. And what I'm saying by creating a party is going back to what we discussed earlier. You need to have a reason why all these people are adventuring together. So when you're creating your characters together, well, it's not just a question of how did you meet and how did you get to stick together, but it's also like if you have people of various races in the sense of science fiction setting where there are a million races from all over the galaxy, well, how do you get to speak the same language? If you had been involved in wars, well, why are you not fighting each other? Why are you fighting each other? So these are all things that you have to think of when you're creating the game setting. If there are alignments, well, if you've got people of various alignments, well, how come you're all together and adventuring together? So by creating characters in one big setting with everyone present, you can sort of iron out some of these problems that you get when everybody's creating their things from their own little sides.
See, the players and the player characters are the center of the equation here, because even though you created the world, you created the plot and the meta plot, or you're adapting it from a pre-published setting, the people who the adventures are really going to be about, who are going to be driving the action, are the players and their characters, which is why you should think of it in terms of creating an adventure party rather than everybody creating individual characters. You'll also, when you see them creating characters together, everybody at the table will get a taste for what everybody else's playing style is like, especially if some of them haven't played together before. This guy, he's really building up his combat skills so he could be the one with all the explosives or all the combat spells or whatnot. You have an idea what gaming with this guy is going to be like and what sort of situations to watch out with in the future when you create encounters, when you create, mini plots for your campaign. Also, it will let the players create characters that complement one another so that there are no dead spots. This is a space travel campaign. How come none of us has piloting skill?
Another thing, and this is a problem that a lot of people, they create a setting, they have an idea of what the major plots are, and yet somehow trying to get the characters involved in your plot, involved in the storylines, might be difficult. If you have someone who is the son of a long-lost warrior, and then you plan that this person should meet his father, and turns out he's his enemy, well, that sort of thing, you sort of have to plan it in advance, and the characters must have an idea of where they came from, and it has to fit with your storyline. It's very unlikely that players will spontaneously create characters that perfectly fit with your game setting and with your meta plots and your plots and all the NPCs that you have. So one way you can do is to tell people, I have several things that you can take that will give you advantages and disadvantages. For instance, you can have the lost orphan character trait, and you sort of prepare all of this. It's a little blurb about their background that you've already written that already fits in your game system, and you get to choose which one of them, so it's not like you're imposing on them. And at the same time, they can select something that fits with their character, and you can sort of develop that angle. So basically just seed the character background with some tidbits of information that you can use with your game setting, and that guarantees that they will fit, and you don't have to sort of torture your plot and try to come up with a convoluted way as to just how exactly did this person get abandoned and meet his father, and basically have a reason beyond the well, okay, let's just assume all of a sudden that you're an orphan and you reveal this like free game session after they've started, and they go, well, no, I wasn't. I created a dad and a mother in my character background.
Oh, no, there are pros and cons to making detailed backgrounds or not making detailed backgrounds. On the one hand, if the player characters have detailed backgrounds written up from the very get-go, as long as you, the GM, approve of them and say it's appropriate for the campaign, don't forget, you have the right to veto this sort of thing.
Well, that's one thing that sometimes they talk about Munchkins, and they create a character, and people think of Munchkinning in terms of the rule system being abused to create a very powerful character. But there is also the Munchkinning factor that happens when you are running a game where you have a background, and people sort of write all these things about their background that would otherwise give them
several hooks to control the game later on.
Exactly, like, yes, I'm the son of the king of the universe, you know? Or I'm actually a clone in the series of clone, and whenever I die, I come back, and whenever I start a new campaign, my clone gets reanimated, and basically they're just playing the same character over and over and over again.
You always have a right to veto this sort of thing. But it does give you hooks for adventures later on. Like, obviously, if there's something in their story that indicates something about their past that you can introduce later on, that's good. Now, there's also the opposite approach, which some people call DIP, develop and play. That's where the characters start off with no background story, or with as little background story as possible, and then as the game, as the plot, as the meta plot in the campaign develops, they come up with ideas on their own, where the character's background, the character's past, meshes with the present. And again, as long as you, the GM, approve of it and say that that's okay, then this could be good because it becomes more reactive and more collaborative in the creation process. Obviously, you should do this with players who you trust, not to try to take over your game, and players who you know are mature about this sort of thing.
Yeah, you have to watch out with any kind of character, or any time a player sort of creates a background where his character would somehow be the leader of the group.